Hello, guys, and welcome once again to another awesome episode of Flama, the ultimate guide to the game industry. I am your host, Angel, and today we have a returning guest, one of my personal favorite guests that I've ever had in Flama, Mondae. Welcome once again.
Thanks again. Thank you for having me. Happy to be back.
I got you, Monday. What's interesting is, I have all like the data and metrics for Flama, and your episode, I believe we recorded it probably August of last
I
year.
think so, yeah.
And only recently you have been dethroned. But for months, your episode was number one.
Oh gosh. Okay. Okay. So this is the repeat. This is the new number one episode. I'm going for
We
it.
hope so, right? We want this to be the number one again. You, you
Yeah.
gotta you gotta throw hands with Jeremiah. He was number one, but
Well, that's valid. Jeremiah is like he's great. He's great to work with, great to listen to, and like he knows a lot more about the gaming industry than me. So I can live with that one. Coming second to that.
let's see how it goes. Shout outs to Jeremiah, by the way. Monday, why do you think, on a personal note, why
Mhm.
do you think your episode resonated so much with people?
I mean, because Monday is everyone's favorite day of the week, of course.
Or
But no, I mean, I have been told, and I hope this comes off as humbly as possible, that like I make things easy to listen to, easy to understand. Um, Personally, I think a lot of times when you're watching videos like this and it's people that are in the industry, it's very like informative and hard to relate to. And especially, with me, since I don't come from games, be given the opportunity to like work in the AAA industry, it was still new to me and I was still learning. So I think in our first interview, I was able to convey kind of like an easier to digest as view of like working in AAA and what that means. And then likewise in indie, like I'm still learning a lot about the indie space, about games, about game design, game management, all these different things. And so I'm hoping that my episode to a lot of people was kind of like a breath of fresh air. Like it's not somebody telling us exactly what it is and being very didactic. Like I'm not a master of everything. I'm still learning. That's why, even Jeremiah's episode, I learned something listening to Jeremiah talk, and all your other episodes have been great. So yeah, I hope that I can convey that same thing. Like I'm still on this like journey of mastering the art of game development and design with other people. And so hopefully that brings a lot of people to this episode as well.
of course, and just a caveat regarding Mondays, like Monday's power. Monday's episode was a tad longer than usual, and it's because, we had so much to discuss, right? A lot of value. Um, the episode was like an hour and 20 minutes, and we cut it down to two parts. And
Yep.
usually when you have something that's two parts, you have a lot of engagement first. So then the second part is like, it kind of like drops. Not for your episode, my friend. Like, people followed you to part two
Oh my
to
gosh.
listen to the whole thing. So that's the power of Monday, guys. That's the power.
I love it. No, I appreciate it. I like many people, I hate the sound of my own voice. So everyone who suffered through that, I applaud you. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, you gotta clap it up to yourself. I said it before, like we talked like we were like old friends from college, just like recounting everything. You're very easy to talk to. And I think your platform and what you're doing is great. So I mean, just as much kudos to you and the platform you've been able to create.
Thank you, Monday. I appreciate you. So, the Monday that I'm talking to right now, it's not the Monday that I talked to back in August. So, if you were Goku from Dragon Ball, right? Or
Yeah,
Deku from My Hero Academia,
there we
since I
go.
know you
Thank
like
you. Thank you.
I know you like My Hero Academia. You were Deku, right? You were kind of like starting training with All Might. You entered the academy, but this Deku that I'm seeing right now, like you've gotten stronger. You've had multiple challenges. You fought Overhaul. You've become stronger.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me about your journey from August to now with Leap of Faith. Because before you left Bungie, you started something. Now you have some experience.
Yeah.
How has that journey been for you?
Honestly, it's been continual learning. I think when we first started Leap of Faith, we were arrogantly naive about a few things. Like we were like, we're gonna make this game, people are gonna love it. And people do. Like, Project Haven has been great. We've been getting some great reception on the demo we've been able to put out. But once you get past the point of I'm making a project to I want to make the game that people download and play and ultimately pay money for, it's like things have to click in your brain and you really have to like dive deep and like be very critical about everything you're doing. Case in point, like I am the definition of a spaghetti programmer. I go for like, does the feature work? Not is the feature polished? And so in our initial demo for Project Haven, we had a ton of features. We had an inventory system, we had dynamic terrains and biomes and animals, and it's great and they work. But as you start thinking about how are we going to expand this into a massive open world and hundreds of different types of animals, you realize that a lot of your systems need to be reworked. And so I think the major change is not necessarily our velocity has slowed down in a bad way, but we're taking more time to do things right, which is making it become a longer process than what I initially thought it would be. Like I thought Project Haven was going to be out the door in 2 years, and now we're looking at 3 years, maybe even more. Like this game needs to be so sound and so systematically intact that like when we pump out a DLC for a new terrain or something like that, it just works. Um, and then along the way, learned a lot, made a ton of great connections from going to like the MDEV conference in 2024. Shout out to Midwest Games and Wisconsin Games Alliance because that was a great conference and a great opportunity for us. And just had so many conversations and connections with that. Like I know I've learned so much about the industry and about what happens behind the game. Like, what does the business of it look like? What do those connections look like? What does it look like to look for a publisher or look for a VC or even just advocate for your game? So I think this Monday sitting here is definitely like a more polished version of the face of a studio, the face of a game franchise versus like, oh, I'm like a kid that can make a good project. I know what Unreal Engine is. I know how to code in Unity type of situation.
Exactly. A more polished version of yourself. I love
For
that.
sure.
So for MDev, so the main topic for today, guys, is mastering game conventions. Monday, before MDev, have you ever attended a game convention before?
No, MDiv was my first one.
Okay, then
Yeah.
it's perfect. So guys, how we're gonna structure this episode is first we're gonna talk about so we're gonna do pre, during, and post. So what to do pre a game convention, what to do during the gaming convention, and what to do post a gaming convention. Monday, I would love to start with definitions. What is a game convention?
Yeah, so a gaming convention, well, conventions are any type of like group setting where tons of people with like a similar interest or doing the same thing get together. So gaming conventions, it kind of breaks into like a game developer convention. So like MDev was a Midwest developer convention. So it was like people making the games. So we're going there to showcase our games, but to also talk about like what are we doing? What is the next steps in it? So it's a lot of like indie studios and different things like that. And then you have like game exhibition kind of demo. So like PlayStation State of Play or something like that might be something similar where you're going there to absorb the experience of looking at these games versus like going there to talk. So there might be less developers there. There might be, equal amount. But even like GDC is a game developers convention. You're going there and there's a ton of game developers showcasing their games, and that could be indie, double A, and triple A. Um, but a convention is just that group. Like when you're going to the thing, that's why like Comic Con is a Comic Con convention, like people who dress up like that, cosplay convention, BlizzCon, and all those things. So it's a large group setting of like-minded individuals coming together.
Gotcha, I see what you're saying. So since this was your first gaming convention, what were your expectations before going there?
Before going there, I thought it was gonna be honestly a lot more quirky than what it was. I'm so used to seeing like Comic Con and like cosplay and all of this stuff. I wasn't expecting it to be as kind of like dialed down and professional and like really like an informative experience as it was. Like again, claps to like WGA and Midwest Games for like what they were able to do. But going into it, I definitely thought we were going to be around more games that were either less polished than ours, going in with like Project Haven and then the game that we had, Secondary Coven, or games that were like completely like, hey, this game is already making money on Steam, maybe it's on Xbox. I wasn't expecting to see more games that were truly in development. And like going into MDEV, you were seeing games that like, yes, some of them had been published, but most of them were still like, hey, we're still working on this. We're here for feedback. We want to just get players into the build. And that was very surprising for me.
Interesting. How, because if I put myself in the shoes of like a game dev, um, I personally would be hesitant to show and present something if it's not
Mhm.
100% polished.
Yeah.
How was the reception of developers who showed their games that was not that were, how do you say, the game that was not fully polished, but kind of like it was getting there? Were
Yeah.
people positive about it? Were they supportive?
Super supportive. Like, honestly, going there with a less polished game probably enabled you to get more feedback than somebody who had a
Ooh,
game that was like, hey, this is already on Steam. We're just letting you play it. Like, it almost put a wall up that, like, we already did the thing. We're just letting you play it in advance. And, like, yeah, you can leave feedback. You can put something in the discussion on Steam, but, like, this is already out there. Versus somebody who was like, I have one level of a game and it's very blocky. I have basic character movement, but this is what I want the game to be. Um, one jumps to mind, and I don't know how far they were in the development process. I didn't ask them, but it was a VR game where you were playing as like an oversized monster. It gave me did you ever play the game like Rampage when you were like a monster and you had to like break the buildings and eat
yes,
people? Yeah.
yes.
So it was like that in VR. And they had like a storyboard behind them where you could see the different stages of development and overall their inspirations, what they wanted to do. You could play the game and it was like you could tell it was a demo kind of feel. And to me, like that enabled them to get so much feedback because people could talk about this gives me Rampage vibes, this gives me, Godzilla versus King Kong vibes, and like pull in all of these new inspirations to what the game could be. Um, versus like, somebody that might have already had like, hey, this is Kong versus Godzilla. And now you're already like limiting your scope of like what people are
Exactly.
expecting it. So for anyone who's nervous about it, especially for like true conferences that are focused on like game development and maybe like small, maybe start with smaller. Like don't take your first game to GDC unless you just want to, but like find some smaller conferences, but like take it in whatever state, be open and honest about it. Like tell people this is pre-alpha, this is like a true demo, this is like a sandbox experience. And with that honesty, people will give you feedback accordingly. Project Haven, we told them that it's a 7-minute demo experience to the larger open world. They understood the assignment, gave us feedback on that. With Coven, I told them that this is pretty much like the first mass playtest that I had done outside of a controlled environment. And they were like, okay. They were understanding of the bugs, they understood the limitations, but they enjoyed the experience that we presented them.
Gotcha. So, what are the requirements for developers to join a game conference?
Mhm. It depends. So I would definitely recommend that you do your research to figure out like what conference is and what the requirements are. Some of them do require you to have like a stable build that you submit earlier that maybe like the conference organizers can review and make sure it hits the requirements. Some of them just want your name and your studio name if you have one, and then they'll like let you know based off of like first come first serve. Um, so I would definitely say do your research, decide which ones you want to go to. There's a ton of resources for indie studios trying to get into like smaller conferences. I mean, I can't name them specifically. My mind just went blank, but I know on LinkedIn there's so many resources for like indie studios trying to showcase. But all of those requirements kind of differ, conference to conference.
How was it for game dev? Sorry, for MDev. How did you join it?
So how did we find out about MDEV? I think we were looking at possible publishing opportunities and we came across Midwest Games as like a possible publisher. I think they had just announced one game that they were working on. And from there, we got connected with them, got connected with Ben, and then like got connected with like other connections through that connection. And we started seeing them post about MDEV. We had made the decision that for Leap of Faith, we wanted to do at least one conference in 2024 just to like, kind of like break that mental barrier of being afraid to showcase. So we were like, let's just do one. Whether it's small, whether it's big, let's just do one. And so we went to the website, and their website was like perfectly set up. There was like an application process where you tell them about the studio, about what you wanted to do. I believe we did have to submit like a build and a trailer for that, just so they could like see the game and see the experience. And then about 2-3 weeks before the conference, we got the confirmation that like, hey, you've made it in. Here are additional details, and kind of like the booth. So they give you like a setup. Usually it's like a 10 by 10 space, a table, a couple chairs, and an outlet. And then from there, we just planned, what do we want that booth experience to be for players, and kind of started planning on our side.
Gotcha. How do you set up the booth? Do you have like a banner, like computers, monitors? Like, how does it work?
Yeah. So for us specifically, we knew that we were going there to showcase the games, but also the studio. And so what
Right.
we decided to do was we got the like the tall banners that go straight up to represent the studio. So we got those. Both of them were branded with Leap of Faith. And then for the tables, since we were showcasing 2 games, one on each table, we got banners for those tables based off of the game. So we had a Coven banner, we had a Project Haven banner that was like themed appropriately. Shout out to Canva because they came in clutch with like all of our ordering and everything like that. Um, and then for each table, we just had 2 setups. So we had 2 laptops per table where people could come play the game. We had set up our demos to do like an automatic feedback form at the end of the demo experience to like kind of put it in people's face. It's one thing to ask for feedback, but if people are already sitting down looking at the screen and then it pops up with like
Mm,
submit your feedback,
right.
most people are at least going to do the like, would you recommend this game 1 to 10? Like they
Right.
might not want to type all the answers, but you'll get something.
Gotcha.
Um, and then swag. We went back and forth on what we wanted to give people as part of the incentive to come and play the game. We leaned it on stickers with QR codes because that was like the quickest we could do with the time frame that we had.
Right.
Um, and then we did informational pamphlets. So we kind of had like a full setup, but like
Dang.
we walked away with very little stuff. Like people were coming and they were playing the game, grabbing a pen, grabbing a sticker, grabbing like 2 or 3 brochures about like just details about the game that maybe you didn't experience. Um, but yeah, it was wild. It was a wild time.
That's beautiful. Gotcha. So during the game convention, I saw a video of you for
Hmm.
what is it, Midwest Game Shorts,
Hmm.
where indie developers were sort of like doing like a 5 second elevator pitch, like describing their game in like 5 words. And then I saw you and you're like extremely chaotic, whimsical multiplayer game talking
Yeah,
about Coven. And I'm like, wow, it's interesting how you not only have to be to like create a successful indie game, you not only have to be a good developer, but you also kind of have to be a salesperson.
yeah.
Tell me about that. How did you attract people to the booth? How did you talk to people? How did you network? Like, tell me about that social experience.
Yeah, you definitely have to put on your extrovert hat. So, you know, I I am definitely more extroverted than other people. So it wasn't too hard for me, but it's you have to make people want to play your game, especially when you have a name that nobody has like consumer reference to, or like they don't it's not in their brain. Like
Sure.
if you're walking past the game and, the game is called the Yellow Hat Crew, why would you play that based off of the game unless you've seen a trailer and you know like, oh, it's these mercenaries that wear yellow hats or something like that. um so yeah, I mean, to start from the top, multiple hats. Like I think any indie developer, depending on the size of your studio, if you're like managing or leading that studio, or even maybe you're just a developer, you should be prepared to wear multiple hats. Like you're not AAA, there's not hundreds of you, so like you are a representation of your studio, of your product whenever you're
Right.
in those settings, and you kind of have to be prepared for it. So Robert is the other co-founder for Leap of Faith Studios. We spent a lot of time getting our like 30-second pitches ready and elevator
Mm.
pitches ready. And even for Midwest Shorts, like the lady gave us like 30 seconds to come up with like 5 adjectives to describe the game. And so we're like, and then just like, she's like, okay, I'm recording. And I was like, okay, whimsical, chaotic multiplayer experience. But you got to be prepared for that because people want to see confidence and people do want to learn about the game. And so if you're the only one at the booth and somebody walks up to you like, hey, tell me about your game, you have to be
You
able to
gotta be
do that.
ready.
Yeah, you got to be ready, and you got to have the energy to do it. Like if somebody's like, tell me about your game, you're like, oh, it's like a cartoony witch game that you fight people with. People are like, I'll come back. I'm gonna do a lap and I'll come back and
Yeah,
play.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
if you hit them with the, hey, this is like the whimsical, chaotic witch experience. It's an arena brawler where you get to pay us 10 different classes and you're trying to become the all powerful coven. And like you're excited about it. And even with me, like I invited people to play with me. I was like, you want to jump into a round? I'll play with you. And they're like, sure, okay. Like I almost was like putting the controller in their hand. I was like, yeah, play, come on, let's do this. And then as you have that energy, more people get attracted to see like what other people are doing. It's like, even with Haven, Haven is like a little bit more methodical. It's a crafting
Yes.
survival game. So we knew people were going to be like headphones on and really dialed in. But even just that act of people being dialed into the demo, they were like, what are they playing? And then Robert would jump in, like, this is our medieval crafting survival game, Project
Mm.
Haven. You have to survive a world that's ever changing with a plague. Like, here, come look at it. And once they're done, you can play the next one. Like, give them the opportunity to play. Um, but yeah, we were like always in front of our booth. As people were coming through, we were like flagging them down. So we didn't always wait for the opportunity to people to like come to us. Like if they're walking by, don't be super impolite. Just be like, hey, play my game. But like, hey, like,
Yeah,
you got a
right.
minute? And it's just like, yeah, sure. What's up? It's like, let me show you our game real quick, and you can play a few rounds. There's nobody like, there's no line. You're like, okay. Like at the end of the day, they're at a game conference. They want to do those things too. So
Exactly. How willing were people to just like stop what they were doing and like, okay, let me play?
all the time, all the
Oh,
time. Yeah. I think the only time where people were like, I'll come back was maybe like during the lunch period when the lunch section opened, or if they truly had something to do, which is understandable. But
sure.
9 times out of 10, if it was somebody just walking by, they're at a game conference. You can already kind of see them looking back and forth at the different games. And as soon as they looked our way, I was like, "You want to check it out?" And they're like,
Oh.
"Yeah, sure." And then you just bring them over. And I was, of course, like the biggest hype man. Like people were playing the game, and I was like, "Oh, he hit you with the spell," and people were like, wait, what's going on? And I was like, yeah, you want to see? He just hit him with a fire spell. And they're like, oh, okay. Or like with Haven, we're like, oh wow, you found this. And people are like, wait, he found what? Am I supposed to be looking for something? And then people get attracted over. And it was just great. Like, but you have to feed into that energy. You have to be excited about your
Exactly.
product.
Exactly. Did people match your level of energy when you were like, guys, you gotta play it?
Yeah. So there was quite a few people who, speaking for my coven first, that like got into it. Like
Yeah.
I was telling Robert when we were having breakfast before the conference, I was like, I want the Super Smash Brothers experience where like you completely get beat by somebody and you're like, nah, run that back again. Give me another try. And so I was actually playing against somebody and we were going, 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 and he beat like legit beat me. And so he was like very like, oh, I beat the developer, da da da. And I was like, nah, come on, stay in the seat. Let's do this again. And so then we played again, and I beat him that time. And so now me and him are both loud, and there's a crowd behind us, and it was great. Um, and I think with Haven, we had the same experience. Like once we told people that it was like this crafting survival game where you have to uncover this plague, it's like people went like Indiana Jones treasure hunting. Like, what's the plague? Can I do this? Can I do that?
Mm.
And with games like that, it's all about the exploration of what can I do and what can I do. And so as more people who love that type of genre came over, you could see them talking with each other like, "Oh, wait, you can craft that. Wait, you need to pick up those sticks so that way you can do this, so that way you can do that."
Oh,
And it was like,
dude.
"Yeah, this is great. This is great."
How did it feel? Because you've been working very hard on these two games. How did it feel to show it at a convention and see people interact with it and engage with it and be like, enjoy it and frustrated when they lose, happy when they won? Like how was that feeling?
It was so rewarding. It was super. I mean, you're making a project and of course like you love it and you spent, months and hours and money and all this time making the thing on the hope that you'll get somebody to say like, "Hey, I like this game," or get excited about this game. And I remember specifically, like, it hurts me because I didn't get his name, I didn't get a business card, we didn't get connected, but there was one gentleman who was playing Coven, and he was, like, maybe one of the first people to play it, but he was wearing a Marvel T-shirt, so I was
Yeah.
like, "He's gonna love this game, like, I just need to get him to play it," and so he played it, and he, like, sat back, and he was like this, and I
Hmm.
was like, "Is everything okay?" He's like, "Let me submit the feedback for him, and then I'll talk to you," and, like, went to town typing in the feedback for him, so I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's about to, like,
Like
completely derail
destroy
my"
it.
yeah, destroy
Yeah.
it. And when he was done, he just, like, looked at me, he's like, young man, I love this game. He was like, I get that it's early. I get that there's a lot of work. I put it in my feedback what I think you should do next. He was like, but I could see this being an esports thing. I could see it being like exactly, you and I have talked about it, but like the game people play in between other games very
Yes.
casually. He's like, but even from what I saw, I could see like this could be competitive. Like you could be really into these characters and build out like stats and all this. And it was just so rewarding. And then looking over at the other table with like Project Haven, we had like a queue of people. And we had even said at the very beginning, Project Haven, it's a 7-minute demo. Typically at conferences, you want to keep your demo experience like 3 to 5 minutes because people have so much to see. You don't want to take up all their time.
Sure.
But people were getting to like the end of that 7-minute demo and still wanting to replay the 7-minute demo, knowing that it was going to be the same process. And it was just so rewarding to be like, we have something. Like even this early on, we have something that people are interested in.
Dude, that is super rewarding. I love that.
Hmm.
That's beautiful. Monday, something that I've noticed about this whole talk about a game convention is usually what I see is the good thing about being an indie developer is the fact that you it seems as though you're closer to gamers as
Hmm.
opposed to, let's say, if you work at a very like a high position in a AAA studio. So tell me how understanding gamers and understanding the gaming dynamic. For example, you were talking about like the Smash Brother effect. Like, oh, he won against me. No, 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 let's run it back. Like, it
Yeah.
seems as though you really understand what it's like to be a gamer, to be competitive. How do you think that understanding shaped your performance in the gaming convention, as opposed to like a huge AAA developer?
Mm, I think we were able to maybe like pivot a little bit more freely and quickly with things that didn't go well. So like, of course I only want to talk about the good stuff. There was some bad feedback, like Coven crashed a few times. So I need to do some in
Right.
the moment like bug fixing. We had a weird audio issue with Haven at one point. So there was issues, but we were able to quickly, take down our current build, do the fixes and put them back up in the moment. And so we weren't going to the conference with perfection. We were going with this is good enough to start showcasing it to people, and then we can do more and really be like in tune with the gamers. Like case in point, a gentleman was like, it'd be great if I could change the invert Y axis to look around differently. The next day, that night, I put it in the game. The next day, I flagged him down. I was like, hey, I put that setting in. He's like, oh my gosh, yes, I'll play now. And like came back and
Awesome.
played. Um, and so I think with that, we were able to build the trust of like gamers and enhance our experience quickly. For AAA, I think it's harder for them because the person who's at the conference might be part of like the marketing and PR team. They are
Mm,
not the engineer who's going to have to do that
exactly.
update. All they're going to do is like log a bug or put it in a retrospective and then say like, hey, can somebody handle this issue? But typically, even, whatever they're taking to the conference might already be a month behind what that engineer is actively working on. And so there's
Gotcha.
like this gap in who you're talking to, but also the gap in the work that makes it a little bit harder for AAA and like even maybe some AA companies to feel truly connected that directly with gamers because you're not talking to the person who can make the change. You're talking to the person in charge of talking to people. Um, I think some of that's changing. I mean, there are like a lot of like companies that send their engineers or their artists and stuff to conferences too. So that way you're actually talking with like an artist versus like talking with just a PR person. And I think
Hmm.
that's helping like gamers feel more connected to studios. And of course, like streamers and influencers get flown out to like be part of like the studio and stuff all the time. But specifically with us with indie, like you're talking to the head of the studio. If you want to change, like I can add it to the change list.
We can
And
do
I'm
it right now,
also,
right?
yeah, and I'm the engineer. Like you could sit with me for 15 minutes and I could make that change and have a new build for you. So I think specifically at MDEV, that gave a lot of confidence to the players when we said like this is early and we're making changes. I don't know if we're going to have that same luxury at GDC to make those kind of changes because the volume is going to be so high. But
Right.
you know, I think that enabled us for that audience at MDev to really build a lot of confidence quickly.
Gotcha. How do you think that connects to the mission of Leap of Faith?
Oh
because
yeah.
I talked to Robert, I believe in September, and he said our whole mission is to create a modern game studio that's smaller but more sustainable and effective.
Hmm.
How does that connect to you guys' mission?
Oh, I think that is our mission. Like we want to be able, within reason, to listen to what our players and our kind of like advocates are looking for in the game experiences that we're creating and make those things happen. Like we don't want to make the game that this is the game I want because I dreamed it up and I love it. So this is what the game is going to be, regardless of what people say. We want to make the game that makes sense for what we want it to be, but also makes sense for what players want from this same vision, and then that we can build successfully. Like we don't want to overpromise something that realistically we can't do, but we also don't want to put something in front of players that they're like, we told you 7 months ago that we didn't like this. Why did you keep this? But then you got rid of like our favorite companion system in Project Haven or our favorite
Right.
character in Coven. Um, and so I think that early, even without the people at MDEV knowing everything there is about Leap of Faith and our pillars, being able to show them like you gave us feedback that makes sense, we're gonna implement it and at least try it. I think that makes our name like memorable to them. To they're like those Leap of Faith people put an invert Y setting in their game the same night that I
Yeah,
said you should have it. And like of course, like yeah, if you guys have another playtest, I'd love to play your game because I know my feedback matters.
that's beautiful. I love that.
Hmm.
So in MDev, besides Leap of Faith, uh, which do you think was like the best booth there, or the most effective booth
Ooh,
besides Leap of Faith, of course?
I mean, yeah, of course. So there was a group. I actually got connected with them. They're called Alchemy Labs, and they're working on a project called 217. It's like a cinematic horror survival experience. Their first, the way that they presented themselves was amazing. Like they all came in like, well, everyone was kind of in like branded wear, but they all, you could tell that they were all part of a team. Like they all had branded
Mm,
wear. They were super sociable. Like me and one of the co-founders, Patrick, we still talk almost every day, just like studio head to studio head type of situation.
I love
But
that.
their booth was themed so well, and their cinematic trailer, which was something that a lot of other studios, even we didn't have a cinematic trailer at the time, looked so clean that it was easily one of the booths that like I even went and looked at it twice, and like their trailer for their game looked great. They had merchandise, which I thought was like something like a lot of studios unfortunately can't fund right now. But if you
Right, right,
can,
right.
like having a T-shirt for your game, everybody wants swag. Everyone wants to be like, oh yeah, I have the original T-shirt
Yeah,
from like the original showcase thing.
they want
Um,
the drip.
exactly. So I think they were a great booth. I think there was another booth. Gosh, what was the game called? I can't remember what the game was called, but the developer had made a replica of the main weapon. It was like this like sword. And so he had a replica
Ooh,
of the sword at the booth for the character. And I was like, how did you even do this? And he's like, oh, I 3D printed it, but it looked amazing. Like I was like, that's very smart. Like, and I thought that was like a great booth. And his game was really interesting. I can't remember the name of it. If I remember it, I'll send it to you. But like, yeah, it was great. But of course, the number one was Leaper Face booth, though.
of course, always. Awesome Monday. So we heard about like you guys advertising your game, getting some players. How about talking to potential investors or talking to other game developers to collaborate? How did you do that?
So at the conference, it was a lot of just like shaking hands and passing cards. But post the conference, we really like I had like a stack of business cards. It was like I thought it was a money stack at first. I was like, yeah, and I was like, oh no, they're business cards. Never mind. I need to relax. Um, but it was just about making that connection, like setting off those emails, reintroducing ourselves as Leap of Faith Studios, telling them, thank you for talking with us. I learned a trick from one of my mentors back in the past, but like whenever you get a business card, write down like where you met the person from and like one thing that happened there, like something memorable. So that way when you go to reply to them, you could say like, hey, it was great talking with you at Chuck E. Cheese. I still can't believe that you got the high score in skee ball. Something to make them like, I remember Monday specifically for this, not just like, oh
Right.
yeah, I ran into him at a conference. Um, so sending off a lot of those, I joke around with Robert all the time, like it's shaking hands and kissing babies. Like you got to rebuild those connections. and then scheduling meetings. Like, understand that people are going to be traveling back maybe the week of the conference, but as soon as you can, later that week or the following week, scheduling that call so that way you can have that one-on-one conversation and then pitching whatever it is. If it's a co-dev opportunity, hey, I played your demo. We had a quick conversation around possible like level design, and I just wanted to reiterate, like, if you guys are ever looking for co-dev opportunities, we would love to like be able to pitch you a bid or possibly
Right.
go into some sort of partnership. For VCs, they want to usually they have like their own process on their website of like submitting a pitch deck or scheduling time with like their overall like funding team or something like that. But
Yes.
getting to that place is what we wanted to do, and then getting your pitch deck ready and making sure your numbers make sense so that when we go into that VC or publisher conversation, you're so buttoned up that the only answer they have is like, well, the only question they have is when can I play the game? And the only answer that they can
Right.
give you is like, yes, we want to give you money for this.
Let's go. Um, what was the main way to connect with people? Was it LinkedIn? Was it email?
A lot of LinkedIn.
Okay.
LinkedIn is like my social media thing. I'm not a big Facebook or Instagram person, but I am
Yeah.
always on LinkedIn. So I do a lot of LinkedIn connections there. I send messages on LinkedIn, kind of as like a softer touch to an email. Um, Emails I will do, especially because like that gives you like a little bit more credible history of like communication that you can reference back
Yes.
to and like attachments. But it's
Yes.
always good, in my opinion, to like, hey, have the conversation on LinkedIn. It can be a little bit more casual. And then when you're ready to schedule something, switch to the email, schedule a meeting, but then you can have both conversations. Because emails like become kind of like pseudo like business history, people tend to be a little bit more professional. But like sometimes you
Hmm.
just want to talk with people like, hey, like if you ever want to play the game again, let me know. And I'll send that like on LinkedIn or on Discord. We got a lot of Discord server connections that way too. But yeah, LinkedIn and email are the main two we utilize.
Awesome. So MDev was definitely a very good success. Now you guys are going to the big one,
Yeah,
GDC.
GDC. Yeah.
How how do you feel about that?
Good. I mean, I keep saying it's like strategically cautious. Like I don't want to
Mm.
I know we're gonna kill it. I know we're gonna knock it out of the park. It's gonna be great. But I'm trying to not overextend my confidence too much, and I'm looking at like I'm a data guy. Like looking at
Yes.
how we performed at MDev, I know that we got X amount of feedback, X amount of good, X amount of bad, X amount of players that turned into
Mhm.
X amount of like wish list or some sort of metric. And so my strategic optimism is like, let's make sure we understand what success is going to look like and then be optimistic that that's what's going to happen. So, you know, rough number, if 10 times the amount of people that went to MDev are going to GDC, if we got 5
Right.
points of bad feedback from MDev, let's expect 50 points of bad feedback from GDC. If we got 2 more wish lists from MDev, maybe 20 more wish lists. Like some of those numbers, just based off of the conversions that we saw from MDev, let's find a way to correlate that into like the successes of GDC. But overall, if we're able to pull off what we want to pull off with Project Haven for our GDC
Mhm.
build, I think our showing during the conference is going to be incredibly strong. And some of the things that we have planned outside of the conference with like group play tests and everything are just going to be, exactly what we need to kind of tip the scales for Project Haven this early in development.
Exactly. Besides being bigger and have more people, how different is GDC compared to MDev? Besides scale,
Yeah.
of course.
So I think scale in different aspects is the main thing. I think there are more people that know about GDC, so there's more eyes watching it to deem like, hey, you're going to GDC. That's a big deal. Like, how are you going? Like, what is this product that you're taking there that you feel so confident about? There's more publishers that are going to be there. There's more VCs that could potentially be there. And honestly, like, it's kind of like a bigger risk situation. Like, if you go there and you have a bad showing at GDC, that's a lot of people that now have their first memory of your product as a bad showing versus a really
Ooh.
good showing at GDC. And so I think like the overall definition of the scale of GDC is what makes it such a big deal for us. Um, and it's a huge milestone. Like there are some games that have come out that have been successful that have never gone to GDC. but GDC is such a big thing in like the game developer community that if you
Yeah.
have the opportunity to go to showcase your game, I feel like it says a lot about the confidence you have in your product and the potential that you could have with like all the connections you could potentially make.
Exactly, especially with investors, right? You're like, hey, we went to
Oh
GDC,
yeah,
we showed our project, we had this amount of reactions, people loved it. It'll give you more street cred, right?
absolutely. I mean, and even just the FaceTime with those people. Like it's so hard to get that first meeting with like a VC or a publisher.
Hmm.
But when they're already there and they're already walking around, it's
Hmm.
a lot easier to like, see somebody from publisher XYZ walk by and just be like, hey, excuse me, I see you're with XYZ. I would love to introduce you to our studio and show you the project that we have. Like, and they see you and they're right there versus
Exactly,
being another name in an email that, you know, they might not even open.
exactly. Interesting. How are you guys preparing for GDC, both logistically and psychologically?
Ooh. Logistically, we're definitely doing a lot of buttoning up. Like we're going through our pitch deck, making sure our 30-second pitches sound. For Project Haven specifically, we're building out like a new game experience, a new game demo map, something that will really like make players want to replay the game at the experience and also outside of the experience. So we want players to have this kind of like the beginnings of the continual experience of Project Haven. Um, Psychologically, at least for me, I'm just trying not to psych myself out. Like I don't want to go there and like fumble the bag because I was like stuttering because I was so nervous. So
Mm,
I'm trying to approach it as it's just another conference. It's just another handshake.
mm,
It's just another conversation, and almost remove myself from like how many handshakes and how big the conference is. Um, but yeah, it's more than anything, it's just exciting. It's exciting to. I've never gone to GDC. I've always wanted to go, but like whether it was the expense of it or the timing of it, it's just never been something I could do. So like being able to just go as someone who loves games, like that's amazing. But going to showcase a game is just like, okay, like it's just a conference. It's
yeah,
just 5 days. Like it will pass, it will come and go, but we're definitely excited.
gotcha, dude. That's such a huge milestone.
Hmm.
GDC, that's a huge one right there. Um, how about like on the marketing side? Do you guys have like banners? Did you get your leap of faith drip? Do you guys have a cap? Like that's how's that going?
No caps. We should get caps. That would actually be pretty cool. So we got Leap of Faith t-shirts for MDEV that we're gonna wear again there. We still have the banners. We do have a trailer that we've been cooking on that I think we're gonna release later today. So
Let's go.
I'll make sure that gets blasted everywhere. That shows a little bit more about Project Haven that we're excited about. Um, and then yeah, really just some of the connections that we already have, confirming if they're gonna be at GDC to like have those face-to-face conversations, or regroup with face-to-face conversations. We're probably gonna do a little bit more like visual pushes with Project Haven. So maybe some like video logs, maybe a little gameplay reveal as we get closer to GDC. But right now we're more focused on like what we need to do for the build. And then once we have that sound, we can start doing like a big marketing push on like overall PR and getting people like wanting to come to our booth. Um, but even internally, I mean, I think we're gonna have I'm very confident we're gonna have a pretty good queue of people coming to check out Project Haven.
Yes, no doubt you guys will do an amazing job at
Thank-
GDC.
Yeah, thank you.
There's no doubt, dude. No doubt. Monday, if you had, I've seen you grown so much since we first talked back in August. If you had a time machine, right?
Hmm.
You could go back in time to when you left Bungie and started Leap of Faith and talk to yourself at that time with the knowledge that you have right now and the experience. What would you say to your former self?
Um, Probably focus on one thing a little bit more. I
What was
think at the beginning of Leap of Faith, I think I was approaching it more of like just another project with Project Haven. And so, which was good. We did a lot very quickly. We got a lot of systems in place. But now that we're at a step where we need to make things work, not only with single player and be like scalable in like a very large way, but also make things work with multiplayer, which is like its own cup of worms. I almost wish I would have told myself back then to like slow down, understand that this is gonna take years. Like you're
Hmm.
not the you're not the fix all that can all of a sudden make this game in 6 months. Like it's gonna take time and understand that and almost focus on multiplayer first. Like if we would have got multiplayer and built our systems around multiplayer earlier, I think we might have been kind of like at a faster trajectory now because so many of these systems would have been in place. Um, and then also too, I kind of would have told myself to like, don't be afraid to like put yourself out there earlier more. Like
Right.
I know like you and I talked very early and I talked with like a few other people, but there was like also some opportunities where I was like, I'm gonna take some time and like maybe in a
Mm,
few months we could circle back or I just flat out said like no, I'm not interested right now, but thank you for the opportunity to like talking on like, not even just podcasts, but just like talking with like people. Like, hey, can you jump on a call? I would love to hear about like your experience with Bungie or,
gotcha.
just overall like your game development journey. And I think I shot a lot of it down because I wasn't confident in like, can I tell people something that'll be useful versus just like you listen to Monday talk for an hour or something like that. And I should have because, looking back, I think everyone's just looking for someone to make them not feel crazy with like their game development or game design journey. And the industry is such in a volatile place that like you don't know where your career is going to go. That like just being able to talk with someone can help so many people. And I found that now as I talk to more people who have kept up with my LinkedIn or who kept up with Leap of Faith, and they're just like, "Hey, I've been watching your journey for 6 months," and I was like, "Really?" They're like, "Yeah, it's so inspiring," and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wish I would have talked to you earlier."
That's me right there. That's me right
Thank you.
there. I got you, Monday. Awesome. Monday, that's perfect. We're almost at the end of the episode. I wanted to ask you, if there are any playtesters that want to try your game,
Mhm.
any possible investors that want to talk to you, or any possible collaborators, where can they reach you?
Yeah, so we have a website, leapoffaithstudios.com. On there, you can use our contact us. If you're an investor, if you're somebody who's interested in like just being a partner with the studio in some capacity, if you're a play tester, we don't have any open roles right now, but we are accepting applications for the future. So if you're looking for like roles in game development, like use that contact us to send us up your information. You can also email me directly, Mondae.Atughonu at Leap of Faith Studios. And then we are working on getting Instagram, X, and YouTube set up in like a more sound format. But right now, our LinkedIn page is also up for Leap of Faith Studios. And you can reach out to either the studio overall there or reach out to me directly. And I'd be more than happy to talk with anyone.
Let's go. And where can people play Coven and Haven?
So Haven right now is on Steam as a playable demo. It is our MDEV build. We're hoping to update it with the GDC build closer to like end of February, early March once we wrap a few things. And Coven is on itch currently. We're starting work on like the Steam page for Coven, and then we'll migrate over to that one. But we're still functioning out of itch right now for Coven as a playable demo. And then Coven has monthly playtests that you can find in the Coven Discord server.
Yeah, so Discord would be a great place to like
Oh yeah, of
interact with
course.
you.
Yes. I
Right,
am
right.
I don't have a fun Discord name. I'm just Monday on Discord, but like you could definitely interact with me there. And I'll make sure I send you the links that maybe you can attach to this for both the Haven and the Coven Discord servers.
Exactly, guys. We're gonna have all those links in the description below if you're interested in playing Haven or Coven. I have played both,
Yeah.
and they have been mind blowing. Especially Haven, like the whole like dynamic, how things grow. Is
Hmm.
dude, it's mind blowing. Please play Haven, Coven. Join the Discord. I talked to Monday back in August for the first time as I was starting my podcasting journey, like my journey in the gaming industry. And Monday was kind enough to like be a guest and help me out and such. Um, and I believe that I know there's a lot of things going on in the gaming industry, but I believe that the vision that Monday and Robert have, making smaller studios that are sustainable and effective. I believe that's the future of gaming. Like it's really up to us to make these studios make games and rebuild the gaming industry.
Yeah.
So when I see people like Monday or Robert, uh, just making new things and going at it and do their best and doing their best to rebuild their industry, like there's a very special place in my heart for that. So
I appreciate it.
guys, go support Monday, support Robert, like 100%. Yep.
No, I appreciate it so much, man.
I got you, man. I got you. That's it for today, guys. Monday, thank you so much for coming a second time.
Yeah.
And hope to collaborate soon.
Yeah, man. Thank you again. Back anytime. Thank you for the
All right.
opportunity.
Thank you.